So, the first ever episode of Building Tomorrow. I'm Tim from Go Present. This podcast is quite simply about picking the brain of great leaders who work very closely with investors, VCs, and entrepreneurs to help them understand the areas they should focus on in an ever growing AI economy and where returns seem to get crazier and crazier. And the speed to that return is also supersonic. So, today I'm joined by Andrew. Andrew, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Tim. It's great to be here. Excited for the conversation. I'm Andrew. I'm a reformed accountant who spent the last 20 years or so working on both sides of the hiring equation. And that's where I'm hoping I can bring some unique insights to the discussion today. I'm a award-winning career coach and a best-selling author in the job search and career coaching space. But I've also got 20 years worth of experience of running executive search firms and working with the investor community on their most important hires. So the day job, as you can probably tell from the background behind me, is in the sporting world at the moment. So I'm the MD of Executives in Sport, and we help sporting organisations get a competitive advantage through people. And the sports tech and investor landscape at the moment is a really exciting one. So interested to see where the conversation goes.
You now go to a fancy gym, and actually, I have an Olympic athlete who trains in there called Keely Hodgkins or Hodgkinson, and
Yeah,
it
Keely
was I had a
Hodgkinson.
very yes, yeah, absolutely. I had a very humbling experience when I was on the bike cycling the other day, and she was a couple of bikes over, and I was pouring sweat and struggling, and she was as smooth as anything, right? So I think everyone really underestimates the kind of the levels of fitness and training actually elite sports stars really go through, and kind of the gulf between the normal human being and actually the work and dedication that it takes to be number one.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah, the levels are absolutely insane. And, I think um, where sports organizations are now trying to think is how do we apply a similar performance mindset to what happens off of the pitch, off of the track, off of the court. It's the business side of it, which historically has always understandably come very much second to the athlete side
Mm.
of it, is now a really firm focus. It's incredible when you see these people in action, that's for sure.
I mean, you have a phenomenal background, and I really want to dive into that last 20 years because you've helped so many different business leaders from CEOs to investors, etc. Have you seen any of those other industries that you work very closely with now being emulated in the sports sector?
Um, I think certainly the tech sort of playbook is starting to eke in when you look at how valuations have come to, when you look at the emergence of some subscription style annuity revenues and things like
Hmm.
that. And the media world and sport are kind of pretty well infused as well. But there's definitely some nuances. I think sport is at this really interesting intersection of societal impact, of kind of fan loyalty and fan engagement, technology that's coming in, and holding on to the traditional, because sport is obviously very emotional and traditional in its
Mm.
core. So it's definitely borrowing best practice from other areas, but it's also quite a unique Rubik's cube for executives to line up and try and get everything right.
This tech angle in sports I find very fascinating. There was two moments in my life actually with motorsports where I didn't really understand how ridiculous the technology was and how it's used to gain an advantage. So once I had this really crazy experience where I ended up in Alabama and I went to the NASCAR in Talladega,
Nice.
and we made friends with the drivers. So I made friends with this guy called Austin Dillon who like wears the sort of number 3 shirt as such, which is like a very famous number. And we go into his truck. um, they were effectively being able to kind of build a digital twin of what their competitors were doing on the racetrack. So they
Mm.
could actually map out where they think that car would go on the racetrack at whichever lap of the 500 miles they would drive. And they would work out how to gain an advantage that way. And to see that physically on screen back then, it blew my mind. And also the leadership, right? To say, guys, we're going to spend a lot of money. We're going to have to work with a partner in this space. And this is the partner that I trust to deliver this. Going back to the commercial side of things, win more races, gain more sponsorship. The US sports in particular are very privatized, right? And so very capitalist businesses, maybe not necessarily love of the sport, of which we've seen with the US World Cup. Are you receiving requests then for like technologists or maybe AI
Oh
chiefs?
yeah, yeah. I mean, for sure. So we're seeing our first chief digital officers, chief data officers on the
Hmm.
boards of sport organisations, which is a new C-suite role that didn't exist previously. Lots of work in our performance division around, head of data, data scientists, building out teams in that space, whether it's football, rugby, motorsport. Lots and lots of requirements there, unsurprisingly. Everyone's taken the kind of marginal gains thinking of 10 years ago and the Brailsford kind of approach and are now going, okay, let's just kind of take that to a whole nother level using data and AI. So yeah, super busy part of the market, as you'd expect.
And the stakeholders of the clients that you have, are they able to articulate the true skills they're looking for, or do you feel they're trying to copy and paste from things they may have seen on LinkedIn, for example, or how much shaping do you have to give them to say, actually, I think you really are looking for like these types of data science skills, right?
Yeah, well, it's a really good question. I think this is where board members and investors have a really important role to play in helping sport organisations navigate this.
Hmm.
Because if you're hiring that type of role for the first time, you've got no idea what good looks like, and it's very hard to
Mm.
match up a requirement and to spec it out appropriately. So investors in particular are really helping define what do we actually need here and the art of the possible, like what could we be looking at. And they're advising the sporting directors in these organizations on how that piece of the puzzle fits in. And what they're also doing is, for one of the challenges with sport has always been you can't work in sport until you've worked in it. Like it's been quite a closed
Yes.
shop.
Hmm.
They're definitely pulling in more and more leaders from outside, Tim. So looking laterally into parts of media, technology, automotive, e-commerce, like various other industries, and bringing in some cognitive diversity from outside to take a fresh look at it. And I think that's a smart play because if you only ever hire performance people from your competitors, you'll only be able to stay in line with them and what they're doing, broadly speaking. So yeah, big area of focus.
I used to be very focused on financial services. And what was always fascinating, particularly like the pre-IR 35 time, was you'd see someone move from HSBC to Barclays, Barclays to Lloyds, Lloyds to UBS, and they'd all be working on the same projects doing exactly the same thing. I mean, this is exactly how I started contracting, right? It was worked on this program with Barclays to outsource the bank. We decided not to do it. And Lloyds pops up and says, by the way, we're looking for people to help us outsource the bank, right? I mean, there was no real independent thinking, right? It was like,
Mm.
we've all gone to the same conference. We've all talked about exactly the same thing. Like, let's go do exactly the same thing. And therefore, nobody's wrong because we're all promoting each other from afar.
Yeah, exactly right. It's an echo chamber. And if you think of it really logically,
Hmm.
say, in that example, Bank One is best practice within data and transformation. And so we steal the team from that bank, we pay them a fortune to come and then run a transformation on our team to get up in line with where our competitor is. It will take you 2 years to get there. And during that period, the previous organizations kicked on again. So you effectively spend money on getting or on staying behind to some extent if you only hire from the industry. It
Yes.
really doesn't offer the competitive advantage always that we're looking for. So yeah, even within sport, we're seeing far more, people from F1 landing in football clubs, people
Hmm.
from football clubs landing in tennis, etc., etc. That there's a
Hmm.
lot more movement within these industries to get that fresh thought.
Well, I think F1 in particular is fascinating because that was effectively my other motorsport story. It never quite happened, but I was trying to work my way into the AWS Formula One relationship. And so
Mm.
I can't remember the CIO, I think he's called Chris Roberts, but he's done an amazing job of basically commoditizing all the information that comes from the cars, the track, the weather into digestible bite-sized information. You go to a Formula One race, it's kind of the worst way to watch a Formula One race, right? The atmosphere is amazing, but if you're talking about watching it,
Yeah,
it goes
should
past
boom
every single
gone.
time. You can't see
Yeah,
anything. Yeah. So like, how do you engage with it? Well, it's technology, right? That's the only way you can do it. It's more than putting a radio on your ear and just saying, "Oh, Hamilton's now in the lead and he's being chased by Lando." Digitally, can you open up your phone app and see what's happening? When do you think the next bit of crazy action is going to happen? And I think making all these sports almost more human in a very strange way. I'm really curious to understand what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and is any of this kind of institutional thinking coming into a new digital age?
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is, particularly around, we spoke about the four Bs last time. Strategic workforce planning has always been about three things: build, buy, and borrow. What people and assets do you build internally for the journey?
Mm-hmm.
What do you buy in already made? So more experienced leaders or particular products and services that augment what you're doing. And what do you borrow? So what do you pull in from a temporary basis, either on a consultancy or advisory area? The fourth B now is bot, which is looking at the shape of the organization when you're strategic workforce planning, and then looking at actually what does become a automated technology process. And there is a lot of work going on at investor level and board level around that whole question, and org design has taken on a whole new meaning. More practically, though, it all comes back to competitive advantage in the field of play. So a massive thing at the moment, for example, in football is AI and data modeling for injury prevention. So using technology, wellness scores, and data to be able to predict, actually, Tim, you're not in a space where you can play 3 games in the next 8 days. So we're going to pull you off after 55 minutes, because even though you're our star player, we can see that there's a disproportionate chance of a 3 to 6 months injury based on where you're currently at. So it's all being used like that operationally for decision making and to get smarter around athlete care and ultimately sustainable performance on the pitch.
I mean, I definitely can't play 3 games in 10 days. The
You
technology
need
is
some
definitely,
more.
definitely right.
You need some more sessions with Keely Hodgkinson maybe
Yes.
before we can commit to that.
Definitely. I think this information though is this coming from IoT devices? Is this heart monitors, or
Whole
is this
mix,
cameras? I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah, a whole mix of wearable pieces and various other pieces. Some of it is AI that's analysing the actual performance of the athletes. And you're getting technologies in sport that started in one particular area that are now being applied across various different things. There's lots of that going on. An example with Genius software, for example, which started off very much in the world of recording all the stats for the betting companies. So if you bet on more than 10 corners, it would be a Genius software type solution that would monitor that game, kind of authorize that 10 corners had happened so that the betting company knew to pay out. It would provide the data for that. They're the same guys now, though, that have just delivered automated offside, because the same technology they were using to watch the game to pull the stats also enabled them to automate offside so that we don't get any wrong offside calls. And so, this kind of tech thing is building where they were solving one thing, but then they've also looking at other applications of their models and data, and it's perforating all sorts of areas.
basically sounds then like tech in the sports sector actually managed to maintain its startup mentality, right? Because being able to pivot and attack something so quickly isn't something you see from medium-sized corporates, especially not to enterprise, right? I mean, that's oil
No, of
tanker
course not.
territory.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that agility is still very much there. The big challenge across sport, particularly in the UK, actually, is maintaining the heart and the tradition of what we love about our sports. And it doesn't matter whether you look at tennis or you look at cricket or you look at horse racing or you look at football. There's traditions that underpin those sports, and it's how do we maintain that whilst also evolving at the right pace in terms of winning share of wallet and attention from our fans and leveraging technology to gain competitive advantage. And so they've got these constant pulls of values and tradition over here versus new world here, and making sure that the two things line up as they grow.
And do you find yourself having conversations with boards to almost say, I appreciate the values and traditions that you have. However, if you like maintain status quo, like particularly like hierarchies, as you were mentioning, right? I think companies have really struggled outside of the classic, I can't remember, is it 7x8 hierarchy and flat org structure, and they never really seem to do either right? Do you ever like find yourself having to go into a boardroom and say, I appreciate what you class as like your identity, but actually you're looking at this problem the wrong way, and there's a new way of thinking which I would like you to onboard into your approach?
I'm not enough of an expert in sport to be
Hmm.
able to challenge in that way. And I also think that the tradition and the experiences are really, really important. There is something
Hmm.
magical about walking into Wimbledon
Yeah.
that goes way beyond the boardroom.
Yeah.
You look at other things like that make no sense from a data perspective, like darts, right?
Hmm.
Like darts, like the game of darts, people throwing some stuff at a board,
Hmm.
sells out within 25 to 30 minutes for the entire program over Ali Pali at Christmas. Like people are having to really work hard to get a couple of tickets to go and watch people throw stuff at the board. Now, without understanding that actually that's an experience that's being created there.
Mm.
The sport is at the center of the experience, and it's quick and it's fast and it's easy to engage with. But it's the overall atmosphere that people are buying for. Same with the Grand Prix example you used.
Hmm.
Yeah, exactly the same. Like as you say, it's much easier and more optimal for motorsport enthusiasts to watch that on telly. But
Mm.
having been to the Melbourne Grand Prix and seen Albert Park
Wow.
transform into this
Mm.
amazing race, it's an event, it's a coming together, it's very human. There's you've got all sorts of shows and things on in the evening. It's so much more than just the sport. These are very human centric experiences and events and comings together that people are craving more than ever in the digital world.
Mm. Yeah, I think I mean, my focus is definitely in-person physical events. I think regardless of AI and everything becoming more digital, I think COVID really had that impact on me to say actually the importance of meeting people in real life, creating real connections, and having those experiences that you always remember. I don't particularly remember a good conference call, put it that way, but I do remember a nice
A
a
great
nice
meeting,
coffee.
in-person meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, right.
fine.
And I think with ultimately these types of experiences and like connecting everyone together, I think we've talked previously a little bit about content creators, this creator economy, and driving eyes to either a business or experience. So how much are you seeing of your content creators becoming part of the board agenda?
Yeah, well, very much so. Very much so. In the sponsorship realm, but also, kind of founder brands and employee generated content are a huge topic. What we know for sure in the digital world is that people trust people more than they trust organizations, and people are
Hmm.
more interested in people than they are in organizations. So, by way of example, if you were to go onto like Virgin's company page,
Hmm.
the Virgin company page has like 1.5 million followers or something on LinkedIn, whereas Branson has about 11.5 million. And
Mad.
that's because people trust people more than they trust brands, and they're more interested to hear from people than they are with brands. So if you're not, particularly as a small organization trying to compete against larger ones, you can really punch above your weight by getting people invested in your story
Hmm.
as you're growing, and by building personal brands at the top of the funnel that lead to really interesting discussions. So I think we're going to continue to see more and more of that. I think the error is a lot of people are just falling into putting AI generated slop out there, which is the complete antithesis of personal branding. Personal
Yeah.
branding is personal. The clue's in the title there, right? It's got to be personal. And the ones who lean into that, I think, will do really, really well. And even mainstream, uh, humble brag, but I was listed in 2023 as as the 43rd actually most engaged LinkedIn profile in the UK.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and thank you, but the one above me was Gary Neville, 42, and so that's really interesting. So you're seeing
Yeah.
sports folks come into the LinkedIn space. Hal Robson-Kanu has got what ex-player has got one of the most engaged LinkedIn profiles in the country now. So we're starting to see, LinkedIn, the business platform actually being a place where sports stars and the creator economy within sport is coming, as well as the obvious Instagram and kind of TikTok and Reel thing that is there too. So yeah, I think it's huge, and it will continue to be huge.
I've always been fascinated with LinkedIn, right? But I remember back in 2010, in sort of my first ever corporate job, and I found discovering Fire for the first time, and I was like, wow, do you mean I can type a job of like a person that I'm looking for into this, and I can find the person who I want to sell a project to, and then likely respond to me here? I was blown away by it. I was out in New York a couple of months ago, hosting an event for Tech Week, A16Z Tech Week, and the New York Knicks won their championship for the first time in 53 years. And what was fascinating was that the players kept coming through my LinkedIn feed of celebrating the sport, and never in a million years did I think I would see championship winning posts on LinkedIn. Right. And I
No.
think the other part of this, which is really fascinating, about a year ago, I read this article in the FT about how people are engaging with video content more than any other type of content. So like reading is down, like for newspapers, etc. Economist was previous a client of mine, and they were quite flat and ready to grow again. But ultimately, this very challenging dynamic of how people ingest information and then ultimately want to become affiliated with a person and then a brand. And I predicted about 12 months ago that LinkedIn would become a video platform. And now we're seeing the notification of video. So how do you think people are going to start using video on LinkedIn to grow their own personal brand, to then support their company growth, be it a startup or a VC looking to invest, etc.?
Yeah, well, I think telling the story is a really good way to go. So the way I've always kind of broken it down as a playbook, and that I recommend to others, is kind of a 60-20-20 type rule. So I think 60% of your posts should be thought-provoking value add. So aimed at the target audience, could be in the investor world, could be your ideal customer, whatever it might be. And you're just giving value. So 60% of it should be that. 20% more personal. Yeah, this is something that's come into LinkedIn over the last few years, these more personal posts that people do, opening up about particular personal milestones or things around family, whatever it might be. There's definitely a place for that, for people to feel like they know you and to cut through the corporateness of it. And then a 20% call to action, where you're literally saying, we currently have an opening for 2 new investors to get involved with our journey. If that's you, get in touch here. So from a funnel point of view, it's like value add, intrigue around personal, and then bang, some kind of call to action. And if you run that type of playbook over a 2 to 4 week period consistently, there's no way that doesn't compound to deliver some benefit to you.
There's a statement that I read recently that has stayed with me, which is, do so much work that failure becomes unreasonable. And actually,
yeah, that's cool.
Like, content is something that people forget. It's consistency that gets you there. You can't do this whole thing of, oh, well, I posted once last week and I didn't get the views that I wanted, so we're going to do something else.
It's compound interest. It's compound interest. It's exactly what it is. It's like anything else. It's boring old consistency, Tim. Like any other growth journey, it is boring old consistency that gets it done. Personal branding is absolutely no different. But it's amazing what can spiral off of that. These types of opportunities, you end up getting lots and lots of podcast opportunities, or opportunities to sit on panels at events, or opportunities to get paid to go and speak at different things. And all of that comes from building trust and intrigue with an audience at scale. And that's a massive, massive advantage to a founder.
Yes.
I also, and employee generated content is really powerful as well. We spoke to the BBC about that last year, and they were publishing research and an article on it. Employee generated content is, everybody has these fancy career sites. Of course, we all need those, and employer value propositions. But again, no one trusts them. Of course, you're going to say you're great, and of course, you're going to put some videos up of people saying that you're great. Yeah, so I've learned nothing from your career site. There's nothing here, from the people who've left who had a terrible time. All it is this curated thing. And so, how do you really get to understand it? Well, unedited, unfiltered, employee-generated content is the best EVP in the world from a hiring perspective, because people just trust it so much more. But people worry about that and they think they need to over brand it or over manage how that works. I think let people go out there, get their authentic voice out there, and give a more authentic view of what you're doing, and you attract customers and employees and things more reasonably.
I agree. Actually, my interview technique is to try and scare the candidate off. That's genuinely my technique. I don't want to tell them.
Scared to prepare, we call that. Scared to prepare, we call that.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly right, because they join and they go, actually, it's not as bad as you're articulating, and you go, yeah,
exactly.
Well, I want to be very clear with you. I want you to know all the bad things that may happen here, right? All the frustrations you might have, because ultimately, if we call those out now, you kind of go, right, I'll start here and hopefully it's a crescendo upwards and we'll tackle new challenges, but that's progress as we go through these things, right?
I just say I absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. Bunch of reasons. Number one of the biggest problems we see is almost like a buyer's remorse with candidates, where they've been sold the dream by an inspirational founder, but they turn up and it's just nowhere near what they were expecting and they suffer a big 90-day dip. But also my experience of career coaching is that people don't want perfect anyway. It's not actually a very attractive proposition as an employee to go into something that's perfect, where you don't feel like you can make a meaningful impact and change. Like who wants to go into something that's perfect? So I love the fact that you're doing that. Scared to prepare, as we would call it. And hopefully that's normally well received as well. Like people appreciate it, right?
To your point, people don't want to join the perfect organization. The candidates that we end up employing are the ones who go, actually, I want to roll up my sleeves. They feel they're very good at tackling X, Y, and Z problems. They can see it's there and they become very excited that they can make their own change. Because I think something that's always fascinated me. So my dad's a builder, right? And growing up, there's no labor quite like free child labor, which was the joys of sort of like every weekends and summers. But the one thing with it is, if you go and dig a hole, at the end of the week, there's a hole there, and you go, I feel really good about myself because I just dug this hole. Whereas in a corporate job, you go, what the hell have I done this week? I know I've been productive. I know I've turned up to meetings. I know I've driven things forward, but the CRM system says this and spreadsheets are a little bit different. But you don't have that feeling of personal achievement, which I think is so important in something that you spend so much time doing. If I was to go and work for somebody else, I want to know that I'm tackling a problem. I don't just want to kind of sit pretty and go, all right, cool. So we do mimosas on Fridays, and I don't want to. I mean, I might want to do that some Fridays, but I don't want to do that.
Nothing wrong with a mimosa on a Friday, but to celebrate all the problems that you solved during the week, perhaps.
Yes.
Good work makes sense to your head, your heart, and your wallet. It has to hit all three. There has to be a mental challenge to it, where you feel like you're learning, and the logical side of it is really good for you. The heart side is about aligning who you are with what you're doing and making sure that it's a mission and a culture that you can genuinely get behind. And the wallet bit is, you absolutely should be driven to create strong financial reward for you, for the business, and for your family, right? Like, if you tick all three of those boxes, then you're in a really good spot. And where I've gone wrong, and where lots of people go wrong at various points in their career in the past, is you take things that tick one or two of those boxes and not all three, and that's the fast track to burnout. If you don't have all three in there, burnout is the direct result. Burnout's not just about hours worked; it's actually about alignment. In my experience, that's what depletes you: a lack of alignment.
I think one of the worst jobs I ever had was at KPMG, and it was quite simply lack of alignment. Like, the interviews didn't line up at all with what the job was. My boss at the time said to me, but Tim, you're doing strategic work. And I was like, I'm doing absolutely nothing strategic. I am literally ticking boxes, pushing things through systems. I barely even go see clients. Like, this is the most ridiculous thing ever. And actually, it's that alignment where you go, expectation was here, roles here, and you won't let me free after 7 months, because I was like, this is nonsense. This is completely nonsense.
Yeah, and when you're just trading your time for money, it wears you down. We've all done it. But just on that topic of the coming back, I really like to build on that point of people not trusting perfect. That's been like a massive learning for me in general around how we pitch, how we recruit, and everything. There's
Hmm.
actually, I saw some, and what kind of sparked it for me was some really interesting data around the fact that on Amazon, products that are rated 4.5 out of 5 outsell products that are rated 5 out of 5.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And it's like, well, that's because we just do not trust perfect, because we know perfect doesn't
Hmm.
exist. It's part of our human condition to be very wary of anything. And yet, when I used to go in and pitch, it was, we're perfect, we
Yeah.
can do this,
Yeah. Yeah.
nothing's
Hmm.
going to go. And so now, quite often, where I'm pitching, we'll lead with what the tripwires are going to be that are going to go wrong. We'll lead with where we're not very strong. We'll lead, like giving which sounds totally counterintuitive, but really builds trust. It really builds
Mm.
trust rather than just showing up and throwing up this really shiny deck that actually suggests perfection when everybody knows that it doesn't exist.
What was drilled into me, like Barclays, for example, right, and also the same at Accenture, was this must be perfect. And I remember we wouldn't sleep, right? So we'd go through the night perfecting something, knowing that the person who it's intended for is going to flick through and look for a couple of sentences here and there, right? I think particularly at Accenture, and going, this is pointless. They know who we are. Like I remember one of our opening slides was always, this is our global footprint, right? And it's people wise, I think when I left, there was maybe 700,000 employees there, right? So like people know you're big, right? People know you're number one. Why are you doing this? I appreciate some of them have like $200 million on their shoulders, but they were like, this is how we do it, and it has to be absolutely perfect, and we can't show any weakness. And I always thought to myself, well, this is silly because I'm going up against Deloitte or I'm going up against EY, and we're all going, look how big we are, look how perfect we are. Do you trust us because we're more perfect than them? It didn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's
Nothing
literally
human
carbon
about it.
copy, and they'll tend to go with a previous relationship, or it'll be a
Yeah.
human relationship that ultimately cuts through because everyone's got the same case studies and similar data in the space. So yeah, I think that rule really applies to recruiting, pitching, networking. Like
Mm.
the idea of building trust through transparency rather than just showing up and throwing up a load of features and benefits is the way to go.
I've seen a lot of corporate throw up. Um,
Oh yeah,
and
it's bad.
I've got a couple more questions for you. I know we were intending for like 20, 30 minutes, but when the conversation is so good, I'm quite frankly, I can't stop. This is amazing. I love picking your brain. All the people you speak to and all the knowledge and insight that you gain from them, all the listening that you do, right? And then ultimately applying your own perspective. You have had so much success on LinkedIn. And I didn't realize this till you told me the other day. You did it without paying for a fancy license from LinkedIn. So anybody who watches this podcast, what tips would you give them to how to network on LinkedIn for any purpose?
Yeah. So from a profile perspective, that's very important. LinkedIn's one of the largest search engines in the world right now. So if you are
Hmm.
a founder of an organization in sports SaaS,
Hmm.
one thing you definitely want to do is make sure that you're covering off SEO on LinkedIn. So we want to be getting sports SaaS throughout our profile.
Hmm.
And we want to then make sure that if anybody types sports SaaS into LinkedIn, that you're getting inbound that way. People don't think about LinkedIn from an SEO perspective, whereas actually a lot of people will go there now before they go to Google to find people, companies, or whatever to solve a particular B2B or B2C problem. So there's an SEO element that people don't think about. Definitely review that. The algorithm's been updated recently. There's a new LinkedIn algorithm called 360 Brew.
Okay.
Um, and this is a big shift for LinkedIn, which hasn't helped people like me with big followerships, frankly. But I
Hmm.
think overall for the platform, it's going to be a good thing. And it's a move from ranking posts based on reactions to ranking posts based on relevance. So if you did a
Ah.
post, a load of people did a load of likes, it would say to the algorithm, people like this, keep pushing it. Whereas now it's saying, well, actually that created, lots of kind of clickbaity content and silliness.
Hmm.
What we're going to do, we want to be, a platform of experts. So when people post, we're going to judge based on the people that comment, but also based on the congruence of the post with your profile, how relevant is it? So if I went and started posting about procurement,
Hmm.
it would go, Andrew has zero experience in procurement, so we're not going to rank this post very highly. Yeah. If Tim
Yes.
posted on procurement, it would say, this dude worked for a number of the biggest banks in procurement for over a decade. So actually, we will push that because he has some credibility in the topic. So therefore, it's never been more important that what you're posting correlates with your profile and your areas of expertise, because that's what they're going to continue to push. And the other thing I would say that works really well on LinkedIn is when people comment or engage, if they are an ICP or a target hire or whatever they are, you got to jump on that straight away. So somebody comments, you reply, you want to be connected with them, dropping them a voice note. Voice notes on LinkedIn get 3 times the response of written notes because it's personal and can't be automated. And say, hey, Tim, thanks so much for engaging with my content. Feels like we're pretty well aligned in terms of how we view the world of technology. Be great to get 15 minutes of your time to continue the conversation when I'm in London next week. Can I buy you a coffee? So like, it's that simple. It's top of funnel, converted straight into personal outreach, and then filling up your meeting pipeline with customers, candidates, or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's a few kind of up-to-date refreshes that are currently in play.
It's fascinating. Probably one for another podcast, but the new LinkedIn algorithm has made me scratch my head quite a lot because I've seen huge shifts in kind of my engagement. There was a video posted a couple of days ago with a guy called Neil Shah, who effectively leads sales for tech companies who he looks to list on the London Stock Exchange, right? So he's got a mega role, important not to his business, but the economy, quite frankly. And for some reason that dipped completely on, but for some reason then on Instagram, it's blown off like one of the best ever videos we've ever posted. And it, in my very logical, normal sort of human being / corporate mind, I go, LinkedIn should love this. Instagram should be saying, this isn't really for us, unless you want to put sort of like Tim and Neil in a bikini and make it sort of a comedy sketch.
There's a thought.
Maybe that's from a mimosa, not a coffee. I've been trying to get a grip of the algorithm, but I haven't. And so this is even really super helpful to me. And the other piece you mentioned about speed, I don't think people realize, but there was a really fascinating piece of research done. I think it was by HubSpot, which effectively said responding to someone later than like 1 minute after they've responded to you means your chance of success drops significantly, a minute by minute. And I think lots of people, particularly in a corporate-y, enterprisey type role, go, oh, well, we all know each other's busy. We don't want to be seen as too keen. And actually, that's completely the wrong mindset. The mindset has to be right here, right now. Even though it's digital, it's got to feel like we're sat across from each other having a chat.
Yeah, same with hiring. Like if somebody interacts with you in any kind of way who looks like someone you'd love to hire, you've got to jump on it. Exactly the same process. Because you can have a situation where Tim has a really disappointing performance review where he didn't get the pay rise he thought he was due. It was a bit tense in there. His hiring manager didn't seem particularly engaged and was checking his phone through most of the performance review. You're going online feeling underappreciated. See a really interesting post from Andrew, and you comment on it. And if you're like a target candidate for me, that is the moment for me to hit you straight away with that voice note. Say, Tim, thanks so much for commenting. I'd love to meet up with you actually, because we're expanding our commercial team currently, and you look like the type of person that would align really well with what we're doing. I think, you know, our business would probably be pretty good for your head, your heart, and your wallet when you're free for a coffee. Now, it's so important you do that then, because if you do it 2 days later, that his current boss, for example, may have, you know, reflected on how crap the performance review was, grabbed him for a walk the next day and gone for a walk and sorry, dude, I was just distracted yesterday. I've been thinking about what you're saying. I want to address the pay issue. Like you're giving the competition time to sort that problem out. And so no matter when someone interacts with you, you've just got to jump on it really, really quick. Time kills deals. There's no about it.
Time kills deals. I say this all the time. This is literally one of my like top 3 sayings. Time kills deals. I was speaking with this founder called Aurora, and their company's called DeepShe, and amazing business. Like they've just grown to like 300,000 users. They're building like a private version of ChatGPT, and they're about to raise capital. And I was saying to them previously when I met them in New York, the complete opposite of this, because with fundraising, you've got to find the perfect time to fundraise, because you don't want it to look like it's been an ever long period. You ideally want to go out and try and close your round in a couple of months if you're like pre-seed or seed. And that sounds impossible, right? Especially with these elongated timelines that we're seeing quite a lot of. But actually, if you go into the market, like I see quite a few people have started to raise capital in July. And I'm going, well, where do you think these human beings are? Right? They're on holiday, right? So you're going to look uninvestable, but it's quite frankly because people are unavailable. It's not down to the real reason, but the perception of it. If it looks like you don't care, even though you do care, you might be busy. Perception's 9/10 of the game.
Yeah. Well, but people, that's exactly right. And people believe how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you're slow in a hiring process, candidates are going to assume it's going to be difficult to get anything done in role. If you're slow responding to an investor, investors are going to assume that you're not going to be as responsive and you're not as on it as they would like. That, everyone's trying to manage their risk and they're looking for clues based on your behavior and your culture as to whether you're a good bet for them. So all of those details matter.
Definitely. So from this podcast, if you could meet one person live, right? Who's that one person you'd love to engage with from this podcast?
There's a guy in the VC world called Charlie Stebbings who runs the Business of Sport podcast and is part of 20 VC. What they're doing is fantastic. And if he's listening, I'd love to engage with him.
Amazing. I actually watched his podcast. I'm going to tag him into this. I'm going to ask him to connect and let's see what happens. And my second question is, generally speaking, from this, who would you like to speak to? Who would you like to connect with you?
Yeah, well, investors and founders who've got either assets or an interest in the sport ecosystem and are on a big growth mission. Anybody in that space, very, very happy to have a conversation and buy coffees or mimosas, depending on your preference.
Amazing. Andrew, thank you so much for your time today.
Cheers, Tim. Good to see you again.
This has been amazing. Good to see you too. Take care.
Take care.